So I asked about a Estonian joke earlier, and nobody wanted to tell me an Estonian joke. I think that's the biggest joke of the day, perhaps. So I'm here to talk about customer experience-driven services/products. My name is Cathy. I'm actually Canadian. I'm not American. I know I don't speak of a specific accent. I actually used to live in Estonia. I don't know if I know any of you sitting here. I lived here for 2.5 years. I was here for maybe 2.5, 3 years ago. I actually live here. So I do speak Estonian, actually, but I'm not gonna say it now. Currently, I'm a director of user experience at a company called EPAM. EPAM is a company that does software development and then do end-to-end product development in a way that they do development, design, strategy, knowledge transfer, all of this, and then so really building product for the market. And my job is to really envision what kind of future that we can build for the client, what kind of value we can bring to the client. I'm based in London. I am currently actually a visiting lecturer at a university teaching about web design and user experience. From Vancouver, been living all around. And I spend a lot of my time, thinking about how the system works around us. My background is in interaction design, user experience. Before joining EPAM, I was working for a company called Frog, which does innovation. And before that, I worked for a company called Fior, which does service design. So really using design thinking to strategize how to build solutions. So when I always talk about system thinking, and this is, I think it's a fundamental of what design really means. And I really want to always start with talking about what system thinking actually means, and what does a system mean. And it's really about, how do you actually have a framework of seeing different pieces coming together. And that's how I really see it. That's what system really means. And I kind of got really interested in this when I was very young. Is there any mathematician in the audience? Damn it, okay, only one, two. Okay, anybody who has math background? Great. So it means that I'm going to explain this very horribly, and then you're going to laugh at me and then thinking that I don't explain it very well. So for the ones that we don't have a math background, so this is actually an MP hard problem for operational research and theoretical computer science. So what is the traveling salesman problem? It's like you have a start point, you have an end point, you have multiple points in between. What you need to do is the salesman, he needs to be able to travel to all the different spots, all of them, and then so start with the place and then return to the same place. But you have to visit all of them. So what is the most efficient way to actually do it? And this is, if you think about operational, back in the days, this is probably what would happen. The guy will have to travel through all these different sales points. And it becomes a theoretical computer science problem and then a different mathematical way to solve this. And it's really kind of more of a theory. And one of the solutions to this traveling salesman problem is the end colony optimization algorithm. Anybody who's an entomologist here who study insects? Great. So if I explain it horribly, nobody will know. So in the nature world, what happens is that with ants, when they're like colony kind of thing, they find a food source, and then they come back to the colony, and then they carry a little food back. And when they carry it back, they will leave a little trail of pheromone. And based on the quality of that food source, how far it is from the colony, or how good or how big of a pile of food it is, that they will leave a different trail of intensity. And it evaporates over time, of course. And so, but then the idea is that the other ants can follow the same trail. So this is actually a fantastic way to solving the traveling salesman problem. So this is one of the solutions. There's a mathematical kind of solution behind it. So the reason why I'm talking about these is really, these are two separate systems. We're looking at systems of how things operate, and then that we use that as system thinking and understand how you solve a problem. You use that kind of looking at things on a bigger scale. So if we really apply system thinking to everything that we do, and from my design background, this is the kind of thing that I always want to bring up. What does a system mean? And then you apply system thinking. And I think the idea is that when you're designing anything, and this is a quote from an architect, a chair in a room in a house in an environment. So there's always a bigger context, and I think it's very important that we always look at the bigger context. And if you apply this kind of system thinking into what actually means, the bigger context, this is one of the examples that I just found. So when you have the lack of system context, this is an example that people have on the highway, flying in America somewhere, and you're driving on the highway, there's a giant billboard that says, "Texting while driving is dangerous, just let it ring." But there's a QR code thing there. So instead of answering your calls, maybe you should pull out your phone and scan a QR code that's really far away, that's impossible to scan while you're driving down the highway with a phone in your hand. So it's kind of funny, but it's not just about it being funny. This is I'm sure graphic design looks fine, but it's about understanding how the people are really experiencing, and then that there's no system context. How is the person going to actually experience this? And then that there was no consideration of that system while this was being implemented, which is kind of silly. If I bring it back down a little bit and then talk about really what it means in the practical sense and the things I do day to day. I do a lot of consulting with telecom companies. And this is actually not my client, which is great. So TELUS is a telecom company from Canada. And their tagline was, I think it still is, "The future is friendly." But when you experience with a telco, and I'm sure that you have your experience here as well, and I know that Estonian telcos are really nice, there's a lot of nice online services, but there's still kind of that inconsistency. And in TELUS' sense, that is specifically, you turn on your TV, there's an EPG telling you what's on later today, but often it would just say information not available. You go into the store, you get a number, you wait for 25 minutes, and then you don't know what you're waiting for. You check in online to see your phone bill with your TV bill, but then the TV bill will say your OTT service, your IPTV service. It's what? It's for people who are not technology background or even in the telco realm, what does that really mean? And that's not a very consistent experience. And when I was experiencing TELUS firsthand, I thought, well, your ads and the store and your commercials say the future is friendly. It's really not that friendly. I didn't feel like it was very friendly. And this is really a system of different experience wrapping together. And that's what brings to our point of what customer experience really mean. So we're going to talk a little bit about what customer experience is, and why do we focus on it, and how do you craft a customer experience to a certain level. So this is the Customer Experience Index. And this is from the Forrester Research. And this is the model that they have. And we look at customer experience from a different level. And the very base level is how effective were they at meeting your needs? How is this corporation, how is the service that you're getting actually meet your need? So basic need. I need to be able to watch TV if I buy the TV service from a telco, for example. Great, that's basic. It's functional in a way. Does it work? Great, it works. But on top of that, how easy was it to do business with? How easy was the service to use? And that comes to the other level. It's yes, I can watch TV, but how easy is it for me to watch TV? How easy is it for me to actually set up my TV service? How easy is it for me to actually get support when I need to? And that is something that often gets overlooked. And then at the top, how enjoyable was it to do business with? So part of it being easy doesn't necessarily mean it's enjoyable. That there's another layer of it that as customer experience goes. Can you actually enjoy it? Or you enjoy the experience? But that concept gets fuzzy because the other two, you can kind of measure it. Does it meet your need? You write your use cases. Yes, it does this, it does that. You can kind of quantify how easy things are to use, but being enjoyable, that's kind of like an emotion. It's harder to measure, but we'll kind of go into that as well. So why focus on customer experience? Back in the days, and then the progression of how technology and product have moved forward. Remember back in the days where you have the amazing Nokia phones? I still have one of them because I like the one on the very left, because I think it's genius. It's like the genius product design, and back in the days, what it really meant. You know, that phone that can do SMS, it has a screen, you know, it does things, you can play Snake on it, it's amazing. Still the best game ever. But, you know, as that progression actually goes, that like they really want to separate from each other, and if we look at the history of just, you know, a series of phones, they always wanted to do product differentiation. You know, they has a little more of this feature. Look, I made a BlackBerry, I have more keys, you know, my screen is slightly bigger. And it's always about that product differentiation. But we have moved into such a different stage now where there's so many products. Okay, there are so many different offerings from so many different places. I don't even know how many iPhones that you can get, how many iPhones people have, because just like there's just so many options, how many different Samsung Galaxies there actually are. I don't know actually the models, but it's not just about differentiating the product anymore. And it's very important that, you know, that the corporation, that now they're starting to focus on what it actually means to be able to offer a product differentiation, because now it's about the experience they offer. It's not about meeting the needs. It's not about the easiness. It's about how enjoyable it is. And that will actually become how they build customer experience to start. So for different corporations, they're starting to shift into a customer experience thinking. Back in the days, they're like, we need to do this. The competitors are releasing this and that and this and that. We need to do that. But not exactly how it should go. It's really always about why do we need to do this. It's about how the different places and how you actually build product and services, what kind of value that you will bring into the customers' lives. So it's about the why. And I'm a big believer that values actually bring engagement, and simplicity inspires trust and loyalty. So we'll look at a little example of a client of mine, actually, not the hating Ryanair part. So Ryanair, everybody knows Ryanair. It's actually one of the most hated brand. Actually, not one of the most, it's the most hated brand on the earth. There was a simplicity index that actually indicated that last year and this year it's the most hated brand. Lovely. There's even a website that dedicated hating Ryanair. It's called hateryanair.com. You can look it up. It's a real website, and just talk about how much they hate Ryanair and all the different things. And then it obviously doesn't help that the CEO of Ryanair, this is an actual quote, he said it in a press release, "You're not getting a refund, so fuck off." He actually said this. Not a very nice guy. You know, he said a lot of weird other stuff as well. And this actually created an impact on their business last year in November, that they had an all-time low profit, and then their share actually plummeted 13%, which is quite bad. And you know, there's a very big trend in different budget airline competing with each other. And this is not a good idea. So then they realized that how bad this was. And I think for any corporation, obviously, you know, the financial part is a very big part of why would drive them to do any changes, which is fine. So then Ryanair actually, beginning of this year, they hired you know, new people to join their team, and then they're starting always getting better plan, and then that's starting by fixing everything that their customers don't like, which is a good start. And then there are 3 different parts of what they're actually doing. They look at the customer needs, so they have more relaxation about you know, how much luggage you can bring, and the penalties, and then the allocated seating. Did you know that back in the days, if you didn't print out your Ryanair boarding pass and you went to the airport without the printed sheet, they charge you £60 for it? It's not a joke. So doesn't sound very nice. So that kind of change, it comes from organizational change. Okay, and then that, you know, I'm sure maybe most of you here are more in the technology background, and that they did a digital overhaul. And then this is where the technology really helps to push that customer experience forward. Back in the days that the website has a 17-step to be able to book a ticket, and now it's 5. So that helps. And it's not just a commercial thing that, oh, it's easier to book. But imagine that you have to actually go through 17 steps compared to 5. I think 5 sounds pretty good. And then they also develop a dedicated mobile app, and which seems like just a normal thing that you should always do, but the truth is, It actually makes a big difference in your experience. You can check in online, you can have your boarding pass on your phone. And then the third part that they really concentrate on is how the brand voice. It's how it actually communicate with the customer. How do they actually build this brand? They launch different campaigns to build that brand image. So all these things, they come together to build that this is their progress of trying to build a different customer experience. So the way that we are experiencing the world is really changing. And we're not just experiencing the world with how we used to, and how products and services reach us have changed as well. Back in the days, you could actually get your grocery down the store and down the street from the guy who pushes around the cow, and then now you get your grocery on Google. I actually order my grocery on Amazon. It's just faster. So everything has changed of how we actually experience the world and what experience actually mean. And a lot of times I try to tell people what an actual experience means, because my background in experience design. It's like, what does experience actually mean? It's not just about actually designing interface. We're looking at a very multifaceted experience. There's different touch point, a different location, and different activities. And there are multiple of them. And when I talk about touch point, it's like from your phone, from your computer, but also from the human to human part. Part of the touch point of how Ryanair did it is the brand voice. How do you actually communicate with your customer? And that's a touch point. And also, if we look at service design as an idea, a lot of times when people map out a service, like there's a before you use the service, during the service, and after the service. And then they all need to tie in together as well. There's that time sensitivity. And then to illustrate that a little better, I will map out, a journey for you guys, and then so that we can kind of look at it together. So it's a multi-touch point user journey. I like to use the example of telco as my favorite industry. So there's like, let's say you want to buy something. I don't know if you have it here in EMT, where it's like a Netflix service where you buy a video service, you can stream everywhere. It's a TV everywhere. A lot of different telco call it. So if let's say it's a TV everywhere actual journey. So what will happen is maybe you go to the store and you see the product. And then so that's one touch point. You're in a store, there's maybe a point of sale, there's a poster. And then you go into, you see get the handheld so that you're looking at your phone and say, oh, I wonder what that is. So you're in store, and then you can probably look it up. Maybe there's a QR code actually on the product flyer. And then what happens is that, you go home and then you say, well, why do I really need this? Maybe I want to do some research on how is this different from Netflix. Maybe I would like to buy Netflix instead. You go home and you do your web, you go on your computer and look at it. And then you can go into the store, because it's like, maybe I want to see a demo of how it actually works. You go back to the store and then you see the demo of how it actually works. And then you finally make your decision, say, I'm going to buy this service. And then you go home, you want to set up on your TV, but might be very difficult. Your TV says it's a smart TV, it's not really that smart. And then that you call the customer service, and you will reach somebody like me with a little headphone on their face, and then say, hi, how may I help you? And you look for help, and hopefully the person is very capable of helping, and then you can finish setting up on your TV. And then that you actually start using the service. And the TV everywhere service, for example, that you watch video, you can watch your video on your phone, on your iPad, on your computer, on your TV, and then it's all connected, and then it's always the same. And then maybe if something doesn't work, that there would be a very easy way for you to connect to go on the website to read a frequent asked question. What question do you really want to know? It can actually pinpoint that. And if you're in software development business, you will know, like, how do you get that ticket from the website to actually a ticket in the customer service point? So then if, the website doesn't really help you, you can submit a help desk ticket, and then you connect all of that together. So we look at this kind of journey, and then to understand that it's really a very full journey. It sounds very simple. I want to buy a service, I bought a service. It says before, during, after. Okay, so kind of map it out. It's like, but there's a lot of things that actually happen. See how complicated it actually is. This is how you map out a service. It's actually really difficult. So when I say that I do service design, it's not about that I design that specific chunk where you actually consume the video. It's about actually looking at this whole system, because there are specific places in here that offers different opportunities for people to actually enjoy the service better. You know, is it actually easy for me to know what I'm buying? Is it consistent across the board? Do I know what I am actually buying? Do I have a proper support system that I'm able to identify my problem, and is my help desk ticket going to pass the whole way? That really pisses me off all the time. It's like I have to explain the situation 7 times to 7 different people for 15 minutes when I call any customer service. And so I think it's very important that we look at this as a system. It's a simple process, but it's actually it touches a lot of different points. So based on that, I want to introduce you to guys a little bit about the different kind of emerging interaction in customer experience. So these are kind of like different things that is happening from different corporations, how they are actually doing the customer experience, what kind of things, and then we kind of break them out into different topics to better digest them. And it go from natural, adaptive, and anticipatory. So, natural. So what is natural? I will always do this, actually, like this was my plan. And then I gave this talk 2 days ago in Minsk. So I asked Siri, hi Siri, what does natural mean? Checking.
From 8 definitions of national, the first one is all relating to or belonging to a nation or country.
What? Okay. Doesn't really work. You see, it doesn't work. I love doing this test because it's like, oh, it's supposed to be so natural. You talk to your phone. It's like, no, not really. But that's one of the point. You know, and I think that the interaction itself seems like it makes sense. It's kind of natural. You talk to your phone. Hey Siri, what's the weather? You know, hey Siri. But is it natural? It is natural to a point, and then obviously there are multiple things that we have to do. And then one of the important things is to actually stepping away from, you know, this is the kind of the trend, that you're stepping away from the keyboard and the screen, and then you're kind of going back into how people naturally will interact with technology. And one of the other example is that this is a display in one of the retail stores that they did this kind of experiment where they have a giant touch screen. And then because when you're in a store, you see a display. Sometimes if you see it, have you done it before? You go walk down in a mall, you go to a store, and there's a giant digital display. You just kind of poke it. And then like once in a while you realize that you can actually touch it, and then you just look like a dumbass, like poking a TV basically. So, so they did that. Of an actual touch screen, but then on top of that, instead of just a touch screen, that they build it in a way that, you know how the girls they hold up their clothes where they're standing there, you know, kind of try on the clothes. So instead of doing that, they use that natural gesture to bring that kind of interaction with the technology into the store, so that you actually try on clothes with a giant touch screen, and then you can actually swipe it to different clothes that you want to try on. I know there's a thing in Estonia called Fits Me that they do similar things. I know, Heikki. So yeah, and then I think it's very interesting. It's one of the very interesting way of how you actually use that natural. And then I wanted to bring this specific example inside of Fits Me because it's in a physical space more so. But if we look a little bit into the future, you know, this is not the future yet. Oh, this is the current. This is the Samsung TV. Do you have a Samsung TV at home? Does anybody have one? Yeah? Does your TV do that? You do things with your TV? You wave at your TV? No? Okay, so does anybody have a Samsung phone? You know, they have a gesture control on your phone. On the Samsung phone, it's like, I think it's like, I couldn't figure out what it's supposed to do, but the Samsung gesture control basically means you can wave at your phone, and I think you don't have to touch it. You wave it, and then that it will swipe, which is kind of awkward, really. But I can see it's kind of the trend. It's like you're going back to the natural gesture and the natural way of how you interact with things. We're all seeing Minority Report. So the same thing for the Samsung TV is that you wave at it. There's different amount of gesture. You do this, and then it goes back to the previous page. And then I think if you do that, but I think always your hand have to be up. So it's kind of awkward. It doesn't really work, but it's an initiative of how we step away from keyboard and from the remote. in the future, I would like to, have a command for your gesture control phone where you smack the phone in your face and then it would just solve all the problem, perhaps, because that's the most natural thing to do, perhaps. So if we really look into the future, what does the gesture control actually mean? What does it mean to be natural? If we think about, kind of a provocation, inspirational thing to think about is that, what if your giant TV is an iPad, that actually can detect what you're doing? Because you can probably just talk. And I'm sure some of you might have seen the new video from Amazon, the Echo, where there's a tube in your house and you keep talking to it. I think that maybe in the future, in a nicer future version, is that you will be able to, you will be so natural in your environment that you don't have to learn gesture, and the machines should actually learn your gesture and learn what is natural for you. But we're still in a stage where we are teaching the machines what's natural. Adaptive. So devices become what you need to be. And one of my favorite example is the Apple AirPlay. If you have an Apple TV or different Apple devices, you can connect to them. So one of the things is that you can actually use your phone as that you control what is on the TV. And then the other one is basically that I was going to do it, but it doesn't work. It's like Keynote, I can use my phone as a remote. So instead of just putting my information from my phone onto a bigger screen, the device becomes another thing. This becomes a remote when I need it to be, except it doesn't work. And then a lot of this kind of adaptive pattern of how you interact with technology, that it brings back to, this is one of my favorite examples to show about, how the different devices that they shift into different things. And this is an example for a multi-screen system. And then how do they all play together? So one of them is Coherence. It's about, for example, you have an app that in multiple devices, multiple platforms, they all react the same way, they all act the same way, they all offer the same functionality. And synchronization, you read your Kindle book, perhaps that you pick it up on your phone, leave it on your iPad, but it's always synced. And then the screen sharing is that you can share what is on your screen to the bigger screen. You can project your YouTube onto your TV. And then the device shifting is one of the things that I like the most, is that it basically becomes that I have a remote in my hand when I need it to become a remote. And complementary is when perhaps you're watching TV, you're watching a sports show, and then while you're watching the sports show, you can actually see the stats on your hand, which is very useful. And then simultaneously, it means that all of the device can work at the exact same time. So this is kind of like back to the system thinking thing, is we look at technology and we look at devices, we look at technology around us and how we interact with them, and it's not just one simple thing, and then we try to break it down into that. And then we go into anticipatory. I think that it's very important that services and products, they have to be proactive and contextual. Did anybody sign up for Google Inbox yet? Yes? Yeah? Did you like it? No? Okay. So, great. I didn't like it either. Why do I need another email app? As if I don't have enough emails as it is. But, the initiative is nice. If you think about it, we break it down into the specific interaction part that it groups your emails together. There's a chunk when you're traveling. And actually, I quite enjoy how Google does it, because there's very tiny little things. I think they're getting specific things right. The Google Now on your Google app or on your Android phone, when you're traveling on the road, it knows where you are. And I get a notification because it knows I'm here right now. And then it knows when I'm supposed to have a talk. And then it would tell me, you should probably leave now to be able to make it on time. I find it a little annoying, to be honest. It's like, yeah, I know I'm late, it's okay. But that's very proactive. It's a very proactive service. And also, the context that it brings of what does an anticipatory design mean. So this is an actual piece of news. Facebook researcher trying to predict when you and your spouse will break up. See, it's very good. It sounds really funny, but the truth is, imagine the kind of services that you can sell now that it knows all these things about you. if I actually know when you're going to break up, I think I would start selling you divorce lawyers before you even break up. Imagine all the different things that could actually happen. And I think that this ties into a different thing. Does anybody here do big data? I'm sure there are some people who do. So great. I'm not going to explain what big data means, but if I were to explain big data analytics, what does the big data analytics actually mean? This is how I explain to my mom, actually. My mom, you see, she's like, what is big data? Is it like really big? Like, what is it? Is it a giant chunk of internet? Is it a giant building in the middle of nowhere? I'm like, no, Mom. I would like to think that there's a giant chunk of information. And then that these giant chunk of information that you can gather from anywhere. But then big data is not just about that big chunk of information. It's about what you do with them. And because how you extract that little tiny bit of what actually matters, that's the analytics part. So I think that the future that we have with how we have as a customer experience, how we interact with everything around us, services, product. This is one of the examples, like all the emerging interaction patterns, and then that we map into the future. And this is an actual thing. I don't have a very specific background in this. This is an artificial pancreas. So you have a sensor so that it constantly measures glucose. And then that you can control it, or you don't have to control it, but then that the pump will actually be connected. Like all these devices, they talk to each other already, and then that you can set to say, if you want them to just talk to each other, when it falls below a certain level, that it will inject this. So this is actually a very nice example that wraps up all the different things that we talked about, the 3 different patterns. Because back in the days, people have to monitor their diabetes constantly, and then that you go have a meal and then you snap your finger, a lot of that. It's not natural. So then that they've developed a very natural way that it's always monitoring you, and then also that your phone would become a device for you to actually monitor all of this. And then also that it knows when things might fall. And then when it happens, it becomes reactive. So, the different examples that we look at, some of them might be quite simple. Some of them don't feel like, Google reads my email, big deal. But if you apply that same interaction pattern onto other things, it becomes a much deeper thing. And if we look at this kind of example, we're really stepping into a future of the customer experience where we're in the realm of unfamiliar interactions. Is it actually comfortable and familiar to us that we have all these technology around us that actually know what I'm doing and how I am doing and respond to how I'm doing? And I think that we all feel that discomfort sometimes. It's like, how did Google know that? How did Facebook know that? Facebook will sell you things on the ads, and then that it becomes a certain level of discomfort. And how do we go into a future where the customer experience is becoming very unfamiliar and that you have that discomfort? How do you make it still enjoyable when you have all this unfamiliar feeling? Remember what I said before about simplicity, trust, and loyalty, right? So simplicity does it. And, it's no longer about choices. It's not about product differentiation. It's not about the choices. It's about that maybe I don't have to choose which one is better anymore. If I have trust, I don't have to choose, then the thing would just, they should tell me what phone I should have. You should automatically adjust my data plan based on how much I use, because that trust allows that to do that. And, we have trust as a base of the emotion, and then that it's about the trust towards the actual services and product, and it's a very deep emotion that will be able to carry on that customer experience. And to leave on that emotional note, that this is one of my favorite stories to tell. Do you guys have it in Estonia? I think so, yeah, right? Okay, I never know, because I've shown the same example in the States, in USA. They don't have this because they think it's a choke hazard. So no Americans have ever seen this. They got ripped off, if you ask me. So the Kinder Egg. So you have the Kinder Egg, and then you remember you break it open, you kind of have the chocolate, kind of break it open, you see a little toy, and then you unbox the toy. And this is the thing. I say the invisible threads are the strongest ties. It's not just about that opening the toy, that you have that happiness, that emotion when you're opening the toy, but it's more about that longevity of the emotion. So I don't have kids yet. I think when I have kids, well, my braggy 2-year-old is whining in the supermarket, wanting a chocolate, like, shut up. But if I have to buy a chocolate for the kid, I think I would buy a Kinder, because I remember that emotion when I actually had when I was a kid, when I opened up that chocolate. I remember that happiness. I remember that unrevealing moment that I actually look at the chocolate, I actually find the toy, that joy. And then that emotion actually is not just in that one cycle of that experience. That experience carries on so even longer, and then that emotion carries on so much longer. It plants a seed. So when I actually buy another chocolate for my kid, I would like my kid to have that same experience and then that nice emotion, so I will actually pick the same chocolate. So emotion might actually be, the one step into the future of customer experience. You meet the needs, it's easy to use, it's enjoyable, and then, but in the end, it's about an emotional experience. And that's it. So there's further readings. The slides will go up. Do you have any questions? Come on. If you don't have a question, I'm going to start speaking Estonian, and I don't think you want that. Questions? No? So you really want to hear me speak Estonian? Hi.
What about privacy with all that? We share that information with Google or telco operator and all that. So what if I want to opt out from that? I don't want to be part of that experience because I want to keep my data private somewhere.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the most important things. And then there's a specific chunk I left out is that, with all these kind of interaction with technology and what you have with the relationship with technology, one of the very important part when we design solution and when we talk about, user interaction, we always talk about empowerment. And then this comes from, the baseline of user experience, where how you design an interface. It's like you have the ability to say, I want to log out. You should be able to log out. I want to delete my account. I should be able to delete my account. And it's called empowerment. So that the empowerment is always to the people, and then that would be a very nice thing to be able to include. I will include that in the slide next time. Good idea. Great question. So it's an empowerment, and then I think you should always have that empowerment to the user and then to the customer. It's a customer experience, so you have to focus on the customer. Yes?
You mentioned simplicity, and that it's good that Telecom will produce data plans on the usage. So
Yeah.
you're saying that the decisions should be taken away from the user, that he cannot make his own different decisions on different situations?
I think that there's a certain amount of automation in all the services these days, and that's another topic. But there's a certain amount of automation of the invisible of how services work around us. For example, I have 2 iPhones, and then the photo stream, it automatically syncs with each other because it's on the same account. But it doesn't give me an option to turn that off. But I think for most people, a lot of things are kind of in an invisible layer that you don't really know is happening, that technology enabling it. But I think the most important part is that it's about a certain level of suggestion and recommendation, and then that if things that you can hide, that you don't have to show as an invisible layer of the service, it would be good.
Actually, there is an example of
Yeah?
a company that did this.
Which one?
It's in Lithuania. One company decided to enroll new plans for users based on their previous usage of the phone.
Yeah,
And guess what was the result of it?
they didn't like it.
But what was the result for the company?
They bankrupt? I hope they bankrupt.
No, they didn't, but they lost a lot of users.
Yeah.
They're number 1 company, now they're not number 1.
Yeah, and I think that's one other thing that I previously talked about. You still have to have that empowerment, because it's like sometimes it's like you focus on one part, like the 3 part, the natural, anticipatory, and then the adaptive part, it has to play hand in hand with each other. It's like you can't just focus on one part. Is it just something about predictive? But if it's so predictive, it's not natural, and then that becomes an emotional impact for the customers as well. And I think it's looking at the whole system, it's like you have to be able to take that into account. Anything else? So Estonian time then. Okay, great. Thank you very much.